Welcome to Buckeyes Tomorrow Morning for Friday, November 29th. I'm your host, Tom Orr. The game against Michigan is in one day. Always a game we look forward to every single year. It is almost here. It is going to be chilly. Buckeyes favored by about 3 touchdowns, give or take. The line's moved around a little bit this week. Give or take 3 touchdowns. But we have seen upsets in this series before. Will we see another one on Saturday? Well, get a question. We put out a call for listener questions for the Buckeye Weekly podcast earlier in the week, did a couple shows of that. But I had one I wanted to save for the morning show. This is from @MDH2959. Question was, outside of Buckeye turnovers, what does Michigan need to do to have a chance to win? Well, I wanted to talk through that with Ohio State's Buckeye Huddle. Sorry, let me try that again. I know which website I work for, BuckeyeHuddle.com. Writer Tony Gerdeman, also on the Buckeye Weekly podcast. We don't say Ohio State on any of our things. I don't know. Anyway, it doesn't matter. Tony wanted to walk through 3 different ways Michigan can beat Ohio State. Feels like there's a couple different paths here. Let's start on offense, where Michigan, at the beginning of the year, kept hitting these big plays in these really crucial moments. It was just, they wouldn't be able to move the ball, wouldn't be able to move the ball, wouldn't be able to move the ball. All of a sudden, boom, 60-yard run for Khalil Mullings. And then that would be just barely enough to win. It feels like they're going to have to find one of those plays where, maybe more than one of those plays, where someone breaks a tackle and turns 6 yards into 60.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, it's even been a key play, as Ohio State fans know, in this game over the last few years, where if you could just stop those runs, if you could just stop those 2 Donovan Edwards runs for 180 yards or 170 yards or whatever, things would be different. And this one, it's not necessarily those 2 runs. It's just the 56-yarder that gets them out of trouble or gets them into the red zone or is scores. If they don't have that, then they don't have the consistency offensively, either running the ball or throwing the ball, to move. Like they're not going to have a bunch of 12-play, 14-play drives. They need a 9-play drive with one of those covering 40 yards. That way they can just make things a whole lot easier for themselves, because this is not an offense that makes it easy for themselves. So if they can, get one of those runs, and a lot of times when they have, it's Khalil Mullings or Donovan Edwards getting out of the first, like running into a wall and then bouncing out, and there's nobody there. So, contain will be important for Ohio State, as we've seen with Donovan Edwards in the past. But if the long run in this game is 17 or 20 yards for Michigan, they better have 7 or 8 of them, because if they don't have a big chunk that gets them moving, and really that's only going to be one drive. So Ohio State can overcome that for sure. But if they don't get those, then it's going to be very hard for Michigan to win. So they need those big runs, and I don't know how many, but they need more positive than they've gotten of late. And they can't have as many 0 to 2 yard rushes as they normally have. If they're getting Honestly, if they're getting a bunch of 5s and 7s, that's going to go a long way as well. But they still need one or 2 of those big ones, just to kind of make things easier to breathe, and also start to create some doubt with the Ohio State defense.
Yeah, I think that would, you hit a couple big plays early. That does sort of create the what's going on kind of vibe. And the reason I think that they really have to hit those big plays is just because I don't think they're going to be able to string together a bunch of 12 or 14 play drives, just because as soon as they get off schedule, like if they're getting 5 yards on first down, 4 yards on first down, and then 3 yards on second down, then it's manageable. And then they maybe can string together a few first downs. As soon as you stop them for a loss, and as soon as you get them in 3rd and 7, 3rd and 8, they are pretty much a turtle on their back. They are just, Michigan there was a stat on the Northwestern broadcast last weekend where Michigan at that point was 19% on converting 3rd and 7 or longer. That's just basically, maybe you steal 1 a game, maybe, but that is just, if functionally 3rd and 7 is get ready to punt, get the punt team on standby. So yeah, if they can't do that and they can't hit big plays, you're running out of ways to score. So that's why those big plays really, really important for the Michigan offense. On the other side of the ball in defense, it feels like an awful lot of this game always comes down to play in the trenches, but a lot of this game is going to come down to Michigan in the defensive line, which has been a very good defensive line, the matchup with the Ohio State offensive line, which has been shuffled a few times this year, and then exactly how well can Michigan get into the Ohio State backfield? How effective can that Michigan pass rush be? Because that's another thing that could really, if Michigan's going to win, it feels like they're going to have to get a ton of pressure and get Ohio State off schedule.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, you look at what they've done over their last 4 games, 3 sacks against Michigan State. They won 24-17. 0 sacks against Dylan Gabriel and Oregon. They lost 38-17. 4 sacks against Curtis Rourke. They lost that game, but it was close, 20-15. And then 6 sacks last week against Northwestern. If they don't get to Will Howard in this game, that's another one where it's like, well, how do you win? So they need to get to him, and they can get to him. And they've got the ability with Josiah Stewart and TJ Guy as not a backup. He's in the rotation now, but he's another defensive end that has come on. Derek Moore has been there forever now as one of their starting defensive ends. So they've got some pass rushers, and we know that Mason Grant can get in there as well, and Kenneth Grant can as well. They've not been superb in the pass rush this season, but they have that capability, especially against what we could consider an inexperienced interior of the offensive line. When you're talking about, even Tiger Shabola has started every game at right guard this year, but he's had his ups and downs. Carson Hinsman starting his 2nd game at center this year. He's still growing into that. And Austin Searveld starting his 4th game at left guard. So there's some inexperience and just some inexperienced cohesion, I would say, on the interior there that could show up in the pass rush as well. But I'm fascinated to see the Josiah Stewart versus Donovan Jackson. And maybe we don't talk about Josh Fryer enough either in terms of the matchup with him, because he's been relatively good and we haven't seen much from him. So that's why we don't need to talk about him, because he's been okay. It's the concern where this is going to be a very Abdul Carter-like matchup for Donovan Jackson against Penn State. We know Abdul Carter got him twice, and they tried to help out a bunch, but that was a few games ago. So this is a different Donovan Jackson at left tackle than we saw the first game. So how much do they help him? How much do they need to help him? And how effective can Josiah Stewart be? I don't think Ohio State goes into this game or leaves this game without giving up at least a couple of sacks in this one.
Yeah, it feels like Michigan between, they've got good pass rushers all the way across that line. TJ Guy Josiah Stewart has lined up on both sides, so I think you're probably going to see him more against Donovan Jackson. TJ Guy on the other side has been it feels like he gets about 1 sack a game. You at least see him in there getting a lot of pressure, 1 sack a game. So yeah, I think if Ohio State gets out of this if you told Ohio State right now you're going to give up 1 sack, I think they would take that so fast your head would spin, and they might even take 2 sacks as long as neither of them is a strip sack. Ohio State probably a little better at staying, coming back from behind the sticks than Michigan is, just because of the more dynamic passing game and all that. So 1 sack doesn't necessarily throw Ohio State off schedule the way that it does for Michigan. But if Michigan can generate consistent pressure, even without sacks, get the ball out of Will Howard's hands, that probably helps that Michigan secondary quite a bit. So yeah, I think, outside of turnovers, which were sort of excluded by the question, yeah, that pass rush, I think, is definitely the answer there. Last thing on special teams, we've talked a bunch about Dominic Zavada this week and over the season, just a dynamite field goal kicker for Michigan. He's going to be worth probably a couple points for them at some point. But we talked about this earlier in the week as well. I think the biggest opportunity for Michigan on special teams is the opportunity to potentially steal possession somewhere. And that's the kind of thing that if they can do some of the other stuff we talked about and keep it close, if they can steal a possession on special teams, that might be enough to swing it.
Yeah, possessions are shorter than ever now. They're fewer than ever now. So every single one becomes more important. And if you lose one, you didn't just lose a possession, you lost 7 points. That's what you're going to think about. Now we just lost 7 points. And so you can't afford to give any of those up. And, Michigan's got to do what they got to do to make something happen. Imagine Oregon not kicking that onside kick. Do they win that game? That's an interesting question. And so Michigan, can they do something similar where whether it's a fake punt or a block punt, anything like that, they're going to try to do what they can do. But even aside from just stealing a possession, a special teams win for Michigan is just getting the field position that they got last week against Northwestern with the defense and the special teams. Michigan had 8 scoring drives last week, and 2 of them went more than 60 yards. Like they had scoring drives of 10, of 20, of 23 yards. They had touchdown drives of 45, of 53, of 58. Like if Michigan is scoring without having to go 70 yards, 65 yards, 55 yards, like that's a win for them. And honestly, over the course of a game, if they don't have to go 80 yards repeatedly, then that in itself is stealing a possession.
Yep. Again, lots of different ways to say the same thing, which is Michigan is not going to be able to do it on offense without either hitting some big plays or getting set up on short fields or stealing a possession here and there. It's just Michigan has to work around their offense this year, basically. And there are ways they can do that, and there are ways they can make this work and pull out a win. They kind of need to stack probably more than one of the things we just talked about. You probably need to hit a big play at some point, and you need to control the line of scrimmage on defense, and you might need to steal a possession too. But there certainly is a way that Michigan pulls out the win in Ohio Stadium on Saturday. Will they? Well, we will all find out together. Saturday at noon, game on Fox. Tony and I will be there very, very early Saturday morning. Try and get you a live pregame show from inside Ohio Stadium Saturday morning as we count down to the 2024 Ohio State-Michigan game. Cannot wait. Should be a great day inside the stadium. A little chilly. Definitely a little chilly. Wear an extra layer, but you'll be fine. You've lived through colder than this, I'm sure. So going to be a busy week and busy weekend at BuckeyeHuddle.com. That's where Tony, Kevin, and I cover the team. Mark covers recruiting weekend as well this weekend. I've got our whole team of X's and O's gurus there as well to make you a smarter football fan. Hope to see you there at BuckeyeHuddle.com. And of course, take a moment right now. Make sure you are subscribed at YouTube.com/BuckeyeHuddle. We are going to continue. We've had a ton of content all week long. We are going to continue pumping out content all the way up to game time. And then, of course, we'll have our usual post-game show live after the game as well. Going to be a very happy Columbus, Ohio, or a very sad Columbus, Ohio at about 3:30 p.m. on Saturday. Either way, we'll be there, letting you know what happened and what's coming next. Are we packing our bags for Indianapolis for a trip to the Big Ten championship game? Or is there going to be a long week waiting for the college football playoff selection show on Sunday? Either way, we'll be there for you at youtube.com/BuckeyeHuddle as soon as the game is over. That will do it for today. Thank you guys all for joining us. Have a great day. We will talk to you tomorrow.